All right, what's going on, everyone? Welcome to the Angelo Carlos podcast. I'm here with my guest, Michelle. Thank you so much for joining, Michelle. Michelle is actually a marketing manager at Amplify Bio. She's had stints at Thermo Fisher as a marketing specialist, and she's one of my classmates at UCLA Anderson. So, Michelle, welcome aboard. How are you?
Hello, thank you for having me on your podcast, and I'm doing okay. How about you?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. I'm so excited to interview you. I've been wanting to get someone in marketing just to get a different perspective, as well as someone who's been in biotech. Biotech is such a hot field nowadays with the advent of artificial intelligence. Kind of being in California, San Diego area. I know biotech is huge out there, so super excited to interview you and just kind of get to know you a little bit better, Michelle.
Of course.
All right. So we're going to jump in now to basically the interview itself. I want to learn a little bit more about you. So you told me that you're from the Bay Area, kind of born and raised in Fremont, and then you went to UC San Diego for undergrad. What
Well,
did you major in?
so that's actually kind of close. I was actually born in China, and I came here to the States when I was 5 years old because my dad was doing his PhD in material sciences, which is kind of an offshoot of chemical engineering over at Rutgers. So after he finished his PhD and did his postdoc there, our entire family moved out to the Bay Area, and I
Oh,
spent like most of my childhood growing up in Fremont, California. Yeah. But so because I grew up in the Bay, that's sort of why I decided to go to UC San Diego just to sort of get away from it all. And I mean, at that time, tech bros were kind of everywhere
yeah.
in Silicon Valley already, and it's only gotten worse. But I went to UCSD, and there I majored in biochemistry and cell biology. And I worked for 2.5 years in the Jane Lab.
Wow. Can you talk about that? Your major, what was that like majoring in biochemistry and then working in the Jane lab?
So when I decided to major in biochem, well, my main decision was because, I was kind of bad at math for an Asian. So I was like, okay, I do not want to go into like chemi or like any other type of engineering that, or like follow in the footsteps of my dad because I just couldn't imagine myself, like doing that much math. But at the same time, I also kind of wanted to pursue my parents' footsteps and get a PhD. So I already had a slight interest in biology. I was good at chemistry, not good enough to want to take tons of math for it, but decent at it. So that's how I settled on my major. And in the lab, we kind of essentially worked on our main focus was on ISG15, which is a gene that gets activated. But in short, to sort of like package it all together, it was the study of like leukemia in humans and in animals. So I think working there was, pretty eye opening, but also eye opening in the sense that I kind of realized that I didn't really want to be at the bench for the rest of my life. And
Mhm.
a common saying among people who choose to do research in their undergrad and whether or not they go into academia is it's highly dependent on luck. So, like, whether or not you get published really depends on how lucky you are, whether or not your PI is a good person, but also at the same time, like whether or not you kind of have your dreams, hopes dashed or not depends on the quality of like the fellow or the postdoc that you
Oh,
work underneath. And mine was not, I would say, in the kind of sense, a go getter type of guy. So, like, I think in the entire 4 years since he got his PhD to like it took him 4 years to get anything published. And that was the only thing that I got published, like when I was working underneath
Really?
him. So like with him, I saw like the worst of the worst, as in like how bad and how hard it can be to like seriously work in that industry. So I am inherently kind of a lazy person. So I just kind of decided to dip and,
Yeah.
just leave with my undergraduate degree.
Oh, no way. That's so interesting. I know PhD is a very long route. On average, how long is a PhD within in biochemistry? Yuna was actually trying to do the same. Yuna was actually our previous guest for those who are curious who also went to UCSD. She was
Mhm.
looking to get her PhD at UCSD, decided to just get a master's. But how long is it usually to do a PhD?
If you are on top of things, like you can graduate within 4 years. That's given if like your PI is helpful,
Hmm.
stuff is working, you're passing all your classes. So like if everything goes right, then 4 years. But I've also heard of people like taking up to like 8 years
Wow.
to do
It's
that,
so
which is crazy,
crazy.
right? That's so much of your life. And at the same time, a lot of people who choose to do PhDs for like biology or biochemistry also choose to do their MD at the same time.
Oh, wow.
So they'll be going to medical school and becoming like essentially doctors who focus on research.
That's so fascinating. It's so interesting you mentioned that. I actually met a few people at UC San Diego as well as UCLA who were MD PhDs, and they said, "Hey, I'm gonna be here for 10 years, buddy." And I was like, "All right."
No, I know.
But props to them. That's not easy. It's crazy. Yeah. Can you talk about lab? Um, do you recommend for our undergraduates or the people who are in kind of college right now, do you recommend them joining a lab to get a better sense if they want this kind of as a career, as like a lab tech fellow?
Definitely. I mean, if you are doing something science related, you should definitely, without a doubt, be working in some type of practical application of it during your undergraduate. So if you're not doing working in a lab, you should be like a research lab. You should at least like be working part time as a lab tech.
Mhm.
And I think it's a little bit wasteful for anyone to get a STEM degree and not really spend some time doing like practical work for it.
Yeah, that's so fascinating. I actually have friends who did STEM, didn't get to do the lab, so they were kind of lost once they got out of undergrad, and
Mm.
just basically STEM degrees are great, but if you don't either go to graduate school, like to become a doctor or like a dentist, or actually work at a biotech, there's not really much you can do with that degree, which is crazy because that degree is so hard. Like it's just as hard as engineering. I feel like as one of the top harder majors to actually do well
Yeah, I think like the modern discourse about like the separation of like a STEM degree being worth tons of money and a liberal arts
in.
degree being essentially useless is a little bit misleading. And I can see
Agree.
like a lot of kids like being sort of misled by that idea because if you choose to like major in chemistry or biochemistry or just basic biology, your degree is essentially worthless unless you choose to sort of do it and do something else like I am in marketing, or if you choose to go to graduate school, which is also kind of
Oh,
what I'm doing.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
so fascinating. So you kind of mentioned graduate school. It seemed like you had an amazing time at UC San Diego. You learned a lot, got exposure actually in the field that you're kind of like pivoting towards. Can you talk about what you did right out of undergrad? From my understanding, you worked at Thermo Scientific in an Amplify Bio. Uh,
Mhm.
what was that transition like to kind of going from heavy into biochemistry and then transitioning into biotech, but more so on the marketing side of things?
So, when I first graduated, I had no idea what I was going to do. I mean, I took like
Mhm.
maybe one marketing course in my undergraduate as an elective, and I was fine. It was relatively easy because it was like the absolute basic of the basics. So yeah, I applied to like random marketing jobs that were tangentially related with my degree because, I spent 4 years to get it. There was no way I was going to get a job that, like had nothing to do with what I wasted 4 years of my life on.
Yeah.
So, so when I did get a job, I landed in marketing. And when I first started off, for most of my career until from Orinox's all the way to Thermo Fisher, that is more so, I would say, on the vendor side of things.
Okay.
So these are the companies that are creating products that, like pharma companies or other companies like that, they're the ones that they're buying from. So Thermo Fisher is more so of a supplier, a vendor. They also sell services. Well, Thermo Fisher is enormous, so they sell literally everything, but
Huge.
that's the side of the business that I worked on. And that's the side that I had the most experience with, and it was mostly to do with like cell biology and microbiology. But now I am a little bit more on the customer side of but a little bit more in the middle because my current company focuses on drug manufacturing and preclinical toxicology. So sort of like the next step that you would get to an actual cure, but not like the end part that companies like Pfizer or AstraZeneca deals with.
Got it. So, can you give our viewers a bit of understanding how you actually got into marketing and how you learn what you learned? Because you're so heavily biochemistry focused in your undergrad. I think a big misconception is that you learn things in undergrad and they're supposed to help you transition to a real world job. But when you get to the actual job, it's nothing that you learned at school, and you kind of have to teach yourself. So, how did you learn marketing and in the biotech setting?
So when I first started off, I'm a little bit lucky because when it comes to marketing, especially what I work in, it is B2B, business to business rather than B2C. So, I mean, like businesses are a little bit less picky about, like the quality of the information, the targeting is a little bit less strict. So, the things for you to learn at the very beginning in terms of like having understanding how an automation campaign works, how drip campaigns, how to best like segment your market, like that stuff's already been segmented for you. You already know who your customers are. You already know essentially what they deal with. So a lot of these questions that normally marketers have to answer are already answered for you. And when you're working in a niche industry, it becomes a little bit easier, I would say, to learn on the job and learn as you go because there's less people with biology backgrounds interested in marketing competing for my job.
Yeah.
So I think like because I was in a very special position where I had a unique background for the specific job that I was in, people were more willing to like hire me for things I may not be super experienced with yet, as long as I had like the base knowledge of what they wanted me to talk to customers about.
Got it. Got it. And for our viewers who are curious about marketing, can you kind of talk about what a marketer does, and then for what that is actually like? So, what does a marketer do kind of on a daily basis? So, what's the purpose of their role at a company?
Well, that's a hard question to ask. Come on, we've taken marketing classes before, and they do literally everything. They're touching everything. So it depends on whether you're downstream or upstream, like a product manager would deal with. So you could be a marketer that focuses solely on like the digital side. So you were someone who like so even someone who only deals with like SEO optimization, like SEO is also a marketer. So it really depends on the area that you deal with. But overall, a marketer's job is to like communicate the message that you have something good and customers should find you, and you want to convince customers that you're the guy, right? So
Mm.
what I currently do right now is a little bit more on the general messaging side. So that's my area. Does that make sense?
Hey, yeah, that makes a ton of sense. And for our viewers who are curious about kind of marketing, Michelle really explained really eloquently. More or less, marketing is really in charge of getting your product out there, making sure that the customer base, whether it be B2B, business to business, or B2C, they're aware of the product and how it can help their business grow or how it can be beneficial to their business. So without a marketer, it's really hard to get out your business or to a certain business. So marketers are really essential to help grow, sell, and let your audience and your potential consumers know about your product. So very essential into every aspect of the business. So what Michelle does is actually very, very important for her company. For those who are actually looking to get into marketing, Michelle, what recommendation do you have for that? Do you recommend they major in marketing, find an internship, apply to jobs? What recommendations do you have?
I think that probably starting off by majoring in marketing is probably the path of greatest resistance for anybody that wants to be interested in it. Because overall, like, marketing is a pretty broad concept and it really varies depending on who you're marketing to. So, like, somebody who works in marketing at Mattel, for example, obviously does an incredibly different, like, job than somebody who is, say, like, in charge of, like, regional marketing for Boeing. So it really depends. I think before you decide to get into marketing, it probably is a little bit better to have a general idea of the type of field that you work in. So it doesn't necessarily mean like, oh, I want to work at this specific company selling to these specific people. But you should have a general idea of like, do I want to work in like a specialized industry? Or do I want to work at something that like most people have a broad access to? And I think answering that question really will decide like the path that you take. Because if you're more so interested in working in a position similar to mine, which is a more niche and specified industry, then the best path forward obviously would be to like first major in whatever like people in that industry like know. So, like, if especially like if you work in B2B where you're selling to customers who are highly knowledgeable, having some of that knowledge yourself will be the most important in like getting your foot into that door. But whereas like if you work at like larger companies like Mattel or something, I think the best thing to do is find maybe not marketing, but I don't know, like something analytics based, something a little bit like more like harder about like harder in terms of like skill sets that you can present to like potential hiring managers. So having something like that underneath your belt probably makes you a better candidate than someone who only worked in marketing.
Got it. No,
Yeah.
that's fascinating. Thank you for the examples of how they can kind of pursue it through different avenues, different sizes of companies, and the certain experiences that they have. Has there been a campaign, a marketing campaign that you either worked on or seen that has been kind of really influential to you and your career?
Honestly, not really influential to me, but I mean, whenever I think about ads, the first thing I remember is I remember that was it Kia? Or well, I guess it wasn't that effective of an ad if I can't remember the company, but remember those square cars and those hamsters?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it was Kia, but the
Oh,
square
okay.
car, right? And
Yeah. I mean,
it had
something
the
about that
hamsters.
was just so incredibly memorable to me that I can like remembered that commercial in my head scene to scene, scene by scene. And even though I don't really work in a field where stuff like that is remotely memorable, I imagine that's what like people who work in like regular companies are really motivated by, right?
Yeah. No, agreed.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's definitely like an aspect of it, right?
Yeah.
Any campaign that's memorable, that really sticks to you, that really pushes out the product. I think I remember in class or marketing class, we had a talk about Google and about their data centers. So the marketing campaign at Google was that Google was building several data centers in rural parts of America, and a lot of the people who were living in rural parts of America felt that these big corporations coming in here, it's taking over our land. We don't like that. So the way Google positioned their marketing was that no, we're here offering jobs, making the community a better place. So that was an example of a big corporation really using marketing to show their message that, hey, we're here to stay, but we're also here to benefit your community. So a lot of big corporations, from what I've been seeing, use marketing to really push their message out and to kind of change the viewpoints and opinions of their consumers. Similar to what Michelle was saying, hamsters or Kia, right? You're like, oh my God, this is so cute. I'm gonna think about this car. Now I kind of want to buy it because this campaign was so creative and clever. Um, so appreciate that, Michelle.
Mhm.
I want to dive in now to your MBA experience, right? So you're very successful in the biotech sector, working already within marketing.
Debatable, but sure.
I, my personal opinion, I think you're doing amazing, and I've seen your
Yeah.
growth this past year or two, and it's just been a highward trajectory. Just seeing you travel to so many places. A lot of times they don't let you do that unless you're actually a really integral part of the company. And I can tell they value you so much. All those times you're going to Columbus to showcase your product. So I'm very proud of you to just see you grow so much in that field. I want to understand. So why did you get the MBA? Why did you decide to go to UCLA? What was your purpose there?
Well, I, like many people, was laid off at the very beginning of the pandemic in 2020. And after a brief week of spiraling and spending 14 hours a day on Animal Crossing, I decided to take
That's how
matters.
Classic came out.
Yes, I know. It was like honestly really perfect because I had no other like avenues to channel my energy into. So like I think Animal Crossing saved me. But I sort of like decided to take stock while I applied to new jobs, like take stock and sort of think about like, sure, I got laid off because like there was like a global emergency going on, but also like, what can I do to like be one of the people who didn't get laid off? Like, what were they doing different? And after I thought about like what I could do next in terms of like taking my career to the next level, and I toyed with a lot of ideas. Getting a PhD was one of them. Thank God I didn't because I never would have like toughed it out. But I spoke to my director of the company that I was at before I got laid off, and she actually suggested like maybe like getting an MBA might be what you're interested in. And I really looked up to her because before she worked at that current company, she was like a high up director over at Illumina before everything kind of like fell apart
Huge.
for them. So like back then, Illumina was a big deal. And so she talked about what a great time she had at UCLA and, you know, how valuable it was. But granted, she went here full time. So kind of a different experience. So I decided, like, after talking to her, that, you know, like, it doesn't hurt for me to start the process of applying to business school. Even if I change my mind, I will have already taken the first steps of, you know, like sending in the applications, taking the GMAT and all of that. And even if I get in, I still can like back out if it's not what I wanted. And I, you know, went through the entire process, not entirely sure if this is the right thing for me, but after I think one thing that convinced me that this is a good idea was when I started interviewing for new jobs during the pandemic. And I mentioned that I was studying for the GMAT and preparing to apply to business school. And I noticed that everybody was really, really positively receptive to that.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, like literally everyone was like, "Oh, good job." Like, I'm so
Yeah.
impressed. Like, even just like the
Yeah.
mention of me going was already enough for them to like improve their impression of me. So I was like, okay, like I think I'm doing a good thing. Like I think this is the right thing to do. So I just applied to, I decided to apply to schools near me and applied to UCLA first because it was the best school like near me because I didn't want to leave SoCal since I live in San Diego. And I decided that if I didn't get into UCLA, I'd apply to the other schools like USC and UCSD. But luckily, I did get in. And once
Mhm.
I got in, somehow people were even happier.
Yeah, that's
And
awesome.
yeah, I've people pleased all the way to my very last year of my MBA. And that's where I am right now.
That's pretty cool. Well, congratulations. I don't want to take away from the hard work you put in, right? Because a lot of times getting into top 15, top 10 program like UCLA, you need to be very, you need to have good profile. So I can tell you worked really hard in undergrad, and then you did have the great referrals, recommendations, and you had the great work experience from your other roles in biotech. So you were a very strong candidate. And it's good to know that for those of people who are applying to MBA or grad school, Michelle had positive outlooks during her interview saying, okay, I'm applying, studying for the GMAT. I will be getting this MBA. So she was getting positive reinforcements from the people working and where she was applying to. So that's always a plus sign for her. And now she's almost done, and she's done amazing these past few years at UCLA. So super proud of her, and to see that growth has been amazing. Um, any advice or tips you recommend for anyone applying to grad school for an MBA, and then another advice or tip on how they can do well and excel during that program?
I think, well, in terms of your second point, I don't think I'm doing well or excelling as hard as you are because I don't think I've taken the best advantage of the social benefits of my MBA, given the fact that I'm the world's biggest introvert. So I will disagree with you a little bit on that point, in that I haven't made nowhere near as many connections as you or the more outgoing ones in a class. But in
You're very
terms,
social.
you're so outgoing, you're
Social
so
nurse.
popular. But in terms of applying, I think, yeah, I think something clicked for me between the time that I first applied for undergrad and then I applied to UCLA. Like something I think made it a little bit easier. I think maybe partially it was because I kind of wasn't 100% committed to it. So the pressure wasn't as high. So I didn't feel nervous in any of my interviews that could have helped. But also, I think something else that helped was that I think it's because I am in biotech and I was able to provide sort of a unique perspective on how I wanted to use my MBA to sort of like change how things are done in marketing in biotech. Because a huge issue right now, sorry to go off topic, but a huge issue in my industry in terms of marketing is that a lot of companies people higher up in the business side of things are either those who have only had like a business degree, only ever worked in business and don't know the technical. I'm sure this is a huge issue in like
Mhm.
yes as well. Or it's people who've been technical their entire lives and then suddenly got shifted into this like position where they're suddenly in charge of marketing, in charge of messaging. And yes, they know like what they liked when they were in the position of the customer, but they also don't have like the foundational knowledge of, like bridging the gap and adequately like getting the message across. So I think my sort of goal to sort of set the standard where you should both be technical and also a good marketer overall. like both of these need to be really important for our industry, and we can't just only have that in like the really, really big companies who manage to snatch up all the people who happened to major in bio from like the top business schools. Like this should be the standard all across. And that was something that I was personally really passionate about. And I think that probably helps a lot in my application.
No, I love it. That's so true. I feel like the best people you work with in in corporations in general, or the people you work with who are business savvy as well as technically savvy. Which you are. You had that biochemistry background, so you understand the whole business itself when it comes to the nitty gritty of the technical side, and then you understand the business side of things when you're actually doing the marketing, when you're looking at analytics. Oh, in that field, so much from us working together, and it's been beautiful to see because me and Michelle, we've been in so many projects together.
Yeah.
It's kind of insane. Like we did like every homework assignment, we did every like exam, like at least 90% of things, and then like
Yeah.
capstone project we did together. And to see Michelle's growth and just her mindset, the way she thinks through things, she's very confident. That was one thing I always picked up from her, was whenever she had a solution to something, whether it be a marketing issue, whether it be a technical issue, she would come off as very confident, and it made the group and everyone believe in her, and we went with what she did. Even if it was right, wrong, we didn't care. We were going with it because we felt like she would go in the right direction, and I feel like you need that.
I'm an
You back
excellent liar. Yes.
So I thought you were amazing there, so I appreciated that. And I love that point. Be technical as well as business savvy. Same thing why Yuna, who we interviewed last week, went to business school, product manager at Qualcomm. Very good with the engineering side, but she realized she needed the business side to get better with product management. So she went back to get the MBA. So very similar what we're hearing from Michelle, really just kind of increasing her skills in every aspect. And that's kind of the growth path she's on. So I appreciate that so much, Michelle. We're kind of coming at the end of the show now, and I always love to ask this last question to my guests before they head out. What is one piece of advice you'd give to your younger self?
Don't worry so much.
I love it.
Yeah.
Do you feel that like a lot of times in society and in our life, we worry so much that we want our life to just turn out a certain way, and it always ends up working out in the end?
Well, I mean, I think that there's a certain amount of thought you need to put into things, but also like just going ahead and taking action instead of agonizing over stuff is always for the best, I'd say. Just do it, as Shia LaBeouf would say. Shia LaBeouf? Yeah.
Yeah. That's beautiful. And I'm so happy. Thank you for sharing your story about how getting laid off pursued you to get your MBA and pushed you into where you are now. And I guarantee you, like, if the Michelle from 2020 during the whole pandemic and see the Michelle right now, 2024, she would be so proud of how far she's come and the connections she's built and the skills she's acquired, and the fact that she is becoming the best version of herself. So thank you so much for sharing yourself, your advice, your love, your everything you have with the world. I truly appreciate it, and everyone who's going to be watching this would truly appreciate it as well. So Michelle, from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for coming on board.
Of course. Thank you.
Of course. Well, everyone, really appreciate you guys watching the Angelo Carlos podcast. Michelle, we'll leave her links below. Come check it out if you want to network with her, reach out. She's an amazing resource, one of the smartest people I know, and one of the kindest people I know as well. So that being said, Jello family, please like, comment, subscribe, spread the word, and we'll continue to grow the podcast into the next phase of it. So appreciate you guys so much, Jello family. Have an amazing rest of your day, and peace.